In this week's lesson, I learned how culture affects the way we communicate and act. Um, how what how we grow up affects the way we think about things. And as interpreters, it's important to understand others to interpret more accurately. From the video on identity, I learned two different types of culture, collectivist and individualist. And deaf people actually fall underneath collectivists, who are actually 70% of the world's population, and value interdependence, which is more of a supporting each other kind of community. They value more team sports and activities. Again, just things that help and lift others up. While individualists are more independent and have more of a lone wolf style of living, which is actually the opposite of how the deaf community wants and does live. So I also learned that in interpreting, you should go in with an open mind, as not judge, and let your judgment corrupt your profession and your work. Because if you go in stereotyping, then you obviously don't understand the culture, which will show in the way that you interpret in any language. In the other video, the woman talks about the first time she saw an interpreter, and it was at an event her father was throwing with a lot of business people who were in the majority of hearing people. So they had, and her father was deaf, so they had to have an interpreter for the hearing people. And when she first saw this, she was kind of taken back and not really accepting of it, because she didn't want people to not listen to her father the same way that others heard him and like the way that he spoke. But she started to realize that the interpreter was so good at it and brought her father justice in what he was doing, because of how good she showed the connection between. And that just shows how important it is to understand the culture, because once you understand the culture that you are interpreting for, it shows in the way that you are doing your job. So for the interpreter, obviously she was connected well enough to actually make the hearing people more intently listening to the woman's father, because of the way the interpreter was speaking. So yeah, again, it just shows how important it is to understand the culture, because once you do so, it just shows in the way that you speak or sign the language, depending on what you're interpreting for. So